In early 1940, before the United States formally entered the global conflict, the Navy's undersea service was quietly shaping a cadre of extraordinary men who would alter the course of submarine warfare forever. A group of young officers, drawn from naval academies and surface ships, were sent to the submarine school in New London, Connecticut, to learn a craft that demanded equal parts patience, intelligence, and daring. Among them was Richard O'Kane, a talented executive officer whose rise to prominence would culminate with his command of the USS Tang, a submarine that would become legendary in the Pacific theater. O'Kane's journey began not on the bridge of a fast warship, but in dimly lit training rooms, poring over sonar charts, periscope diagrams, and torpedo performance tables. He was methodical, analytical, and driven by a hunger to understand every nuance of undersea operations. Parallel to O'Kane's early career was Dudley W. "Mush" Morton, the audacious commander of USS Wahoo, a man whose approach to warfare was as aggressive as it was unorthodox. Morton had a reputation for defying convention, using speed, stealth, and improvisation to strike at Japanese shipping along the Pacific supply routes. It was Morton who became the mentor to O'Kane, recognizing in the young officer a sharp mind and unflinching courage. Their relationship was forged in quiet corridors of submarines under construction, during early patrol briefings, and at dawn periscope observations when the ocean was calm and every shadow could reveal an enemy. Morton taught O'Kane that war beneath the waves was a balance of meticulous planning and instinctual boldness, lessons that would define an entire generation of submarine tactics. These two men, one seasoned and daring, the other disciplined and precise, exemplified the duality that made the U.S. submarine force effective. The crews they led were small, tightly knit, and accustomed to operating in silence for weeks at a time, relying on trust and razor-sharp coordination. Through drill after drill, patrol after patrol, they honed tactics that would disrupt enemy logistics and earn the Navy a reputation for lethality beneath the surface. In the quiet moments before dawn, when periscopes barely broke the waterline, the personality and ingenuity of commanders like Morton and O'Kane were as decisive as the steel and torpedoes of their boats. Their mentorship, innovation, and courage set the stage for daring operations that would redefine naval warfare in the Pacific. In late 1942, as America joined the war in the Pacific, submarine warfare was evolving at a pace few on the surface could anticipate. The U.S. Navy's undersea commanders were not only fighting enemy ships, but also testing the limits of doctrine, developing tactics that broke every conventional rule of engagement. Dudley Morton and his protege Richard O'Kane were at the forefront, pioneering methods that treated the submarine as a precision weapon rather than a mere ambush vessel. On patrols off the coast of Japanese-held territories, Morton's philosophy was clear. The captain was the brain, charting strategy and overall approach, while the executive officer served as the eyes, managing the periscope, tracking targets, and coordinating the crew. This unorthodox arrangement maximized situational awareness and allowed for rapid, decisive action. One particularly daring example occurred during a night attack on a heavily defended harbor in the South Pacific. The submarine slipped past minefields and patrolling destroyers, guided only by faint radar blips and the keen eyes of O'Kane at the periscope. The tension was palpable, each decision carried the weight of life and death for the entire crew. Morton called for a slow approach, minimizing wake, while O'Kane tracked enemy vessels moving in predictable patterns. Step by step, the boat maneuvered into position. Periscope calls transmitted over hushed voices, engines whispered below decks, and the crew prepared torpedoes for a strike that would either cripple the enemy or leave them exposed and vulnerable. When the order came to fire, the torpedoes slipped silently from their tubes, slicing through the black water toward enemy freighters. Within moments, explosions shattered the stillness of the night, illuminating the harbor in fleeting flashes. The operation was a success, but it exemplified the razor-thin margin between triumph and disaster. Every innovative tactic carried risk, and every gamble demanded precision, discipline, and trust. The success of such missions reinforced the value of aggressive doctrine, unorthodox command structures, and the willingness to engage enemy targets under seemingly impossible conditions. Through these daring maneuvers, Morton, O'Kane, and their crews demonstrated that the submarine was no longer a defensive platform, but a strategic instrument capable of striking deep into enemy supply lines. Their methods became a blueprint for the U.S. submarine force, inspiring a generation of commanders to adopt bold tactics and calculated risks, fundamentally altering the naval landscape of the Pacific War. In early 1943, the U.S. submarine force was at the height of both innovation and peril. Triumphs on the high seas were often accompanied by a stark reminder of the razor-thin margin of error in undersea warfare. Boats like USS Tang, commanded by Richard O'Kane, achieved remarkable success, sinking multiple enemy vessels and disrupting Japanese logistics across the Pacific. Each patrol became a calculated ballet of strategy, observation, and split-second decision-making. The crews operated under extreme pressure, often submerged for days, navigating through minefields, patrolling enemy shipping lanes, and evading sonar-equipped destroyers. The rewards were immense, but the risks were lethal, and even the most seasoned commanders were never immune to misfortune. One of the most dramatic illustrations of this balance occurred during a patrol in the East China Sea. O'Kane's crew executed an aggressive attack on a convoy, meticulously following periscope sightings, plotting courses, and timing torpedo releases with surgical precision. Explosions rocked the convoy as freighters sank, and the crew experienced the intoxicating combination of success and tension. Yet, despite the skill and courage, disaster was always lurking. On a different patrol, USS Wahoo, under Morton's command, demonstrated spectacular effectiveness, yet its daring infiltration of Japanese waters eventually led to its loss. The boat was overwhelmed by depth charges and failed to return from patrol, a somber reminder that audacity alone could not guarantee survival. Perhaps the most sobering lesson came with the tragic loss of USS Tang itself. In October 1944, after a series of brilliant attacks, a torpedo malfunctioned and circled back, striking the submarine it had been launched from. In a split second, months of planning, strategy, and battlefield success were undone. Only a handful of crew survived, and O'Kane's legacy became inseparably linked to both extraordinary achievement and devastating loss. This event highlighted the fragility of life beneath the waves, the technical limitations of wartime machinery, and the stark reality that even the most innovative tactics could be undone by a single mechanical failure. The margin between triumph and catastrophe defined submarine warfare. In World War II, commanders like Morton and O'Kane understood that success depended on rigorous training, disciplined crews, and calculated aggression. Yet they also faced the humbling truth that human ingenuity could only go so far against the unpredictable forces of technology and the unforgiving ocean. These lessons shaped not only the outcome of specific patrols, but the broader understanding of risk, precision, and consequence that would influence U.S. naval doctrine for decades. In late 1945, after the guns fell silent and the war in the Pacific concluded, the legacy of the U.S. Navy submarine commanders became clear. The audacious patrols, aggressive tactics, and relentless innovation of officers like Dudley, Morton, and Richard O'Kane had not only inflicted critical damage on enemy shipping, but had reshaped naval doctrine for generations. Yet their achievements were accompanied by difficult ethical questions and sobering consequences. Actions that were tactically effective, such as surface gun engagement or harassment of enemy survivors, were later scrutinized under evolving rules of engagement, highlighting the moral complexity of submarine warfare in a total war. The influence of these commanders extended far beyond individual patrols. The lessons learned from daring maneuvers and the occasional catastrophic failure prompted comprehensive reforms in crew training, tactical planning, and torpedo design. Mechanical malfunctions, like the one that claimed USS Tang, led to rigorous improvements in torpedo reliability and launch procedures, reducing the risk of friendly loss and enhancing operational effectiveness. Crew training programs were intensified, emphasizing not only technical proficiency, but also rapid decision-making under extreme stress. Doctrinal manuals were rewritten to reflect the aggressive tactics that had proven most effective in real combat, balancing audacity with calculated prudence. Submarine culture in the post-war Navy retained the imprint of Morton, O'Kane, and their peers. The principles of teamwork, mentorship, and innovation became embedded in the way submariners approached both training and combat readiness. Younger officers were encouraged to learn from the successes and failures of wartime patrols, cultivating a mindset that valued initiative and critical thinking. The ethical and operational debates that arose from wartime decisions also informed peacetime policy, influencing not only how submarines were deployed, but how crews understood their responsibility to both enemy combatants and international law. Ultimately, the legacy of these legendary submarine commanders is a story of courage, intellect, and consequence. Their methods demonstrated that decisive action and careful planning could achieve extraordinary results, yet the costs of risk were always present beneath the waves. The innovations and ethical reflections from their patrols laid the foundation for modern submarine doctrine, shaping undersea warfare for decades to come. The shadow of World War II may have faded, but the lessons of its submariners remain vital to understanding how men and machines confront danger in the depths of the ocean.